So Vince, what is the speech we're making demos about today?
Well, this is the first attempt we've made as the Liberal Democrats to set out in an overarching way our approach to the economy. We've in the past identified key elements in it, particularly the fairer taxation, but this is an attempt to knit everything together in the way that it will be in the Manifesto. And the basic theme is that we have deep problems, not just superficial problems. There are sort of fundamental cracks in the foundations of the house that's been built up over past decades, and they need fundamental reforms. And there are essentially four themes. The first is that the budget needs to be sorted out, and that's a major problem. And we've identified the process of making very difficult cuts in public spending, but also going much further than other parties in being quite clear about some of the specific items that would need to be cut. And this has been tough on, but fair on public sector pay. It means getting rid of the child trust fund, tax credits for high earners, much of the spending on RDAs, some of the defence contracts in the short term, Eurofighter, and the long term, Trident, avoiding extremely ambitious and unrealistic targets for higher education, and others. And we've been very frank about how this process needs to happen and the scale of it. Secondly, we argue that the problem isn't simply a matter of the government budget. The government deficit arose because the British economy was over-dependent on banking, and we want to see fundamental reforms in the banking system. We want to see the banks sorted out and broken up, and we're quite clear about that the old system of combining retail banks and investment banks, casinos, cannot continue. They've got to be broken up, as amongst others the Governor of the Bank of England had argued, and we're the only party arguing for that in a clear, unambiguous way. And until that happens, we believe the banks should be paying a tax, a levy, for the protection, for the insurance that the taxpayer provides. Thirdly, the third pillar in this structure is we're looking ahead to the long-term future of the economy. It's got to be sustainable. In both senses of the word, it's got to be financially sustainable, budgetally it's got to be sound, but it's also got to be environmentally sustainable, which is the concept of the Green New Deal. And we have various ideas about how sustainable growth should be developed, using some of the savings from the budget in order to invest in education, particularly of deprived children. We can't have a third of the school population failing to make basic standards of mathematical and reading literacy. But also trying to get off the ground the concept of an infrastructure bank. Vast amounts of capital in the UK, in pension funds, insurance companies, not being used. It's going overseas, buying American corporate bonds. We want to see that money invested in British infrastructure, in energy networks and storage, in digital networks and public transport, big rail networks. Where's the money going to come from? It can only come from a new vehicle, which we propose to create. And then lastly, because the challenges of the next decade are going to be very, very difficult, we think the public must have a sense of fairness. And that's the underpinning of our tax proposals, which are fully costed and they're neutral in economic terms, but it involves raising the tax threshold to £10,000, lifting probably as many as 4 million low-paid workers, particularly women, part-time workers and pensioners, out of tax altogether. Because of the way the tax system works, the average taxpayer would get £700 a year, and the money would be taken from the very wealthy. This is taxation on high-value property, about £2 million, getting rid of the tax loopholes that people enjoy, and very big pension pots and capital gains tax, and the revenue from that would fund the tax cut for the majority. So the Liberal Democrats, alone of the major parties, have a comprehensive, far-reaching, radical programme of economic reform.